you'll see a lot more women in creative agencies that do more communications and advertising. But when you get to the tippy top, you will see white men. These days, though, in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen women and women of color take on the C-suite in these big global agencies. Edelman's one of them. We're seeing some in some of the other big agencies, Omnicom and IPG firms. But when I was coming through, the senior partner in my local office was a woman. And it was a great opportunity to see this because she was a mom. She had kids. At the time, I wasn't even married. I didn't have kids. But this was something to espouse to, or at least ask the question, is this something I want to be? So in this situation, I could actually see it. So there's this indication or trigger that makes you think, well, is this something I want to be? At least I could raise the question. As I moved along into the client side of things, the big Fortune 10 that I worked for, it was very interesting to see how women were positioned and also to see how women of color were positioned. When I was in an agency, it was very hard to find a woman of color in the same office. I think I was the only one at that point, but we had a network of offices across the globe and we knew where the others were, right? And one of the agencies I worked for, Ketchum, back in the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, had women at the VP level, Black women at the VP level and up. I happened to be one of them. I made VP before I was 30. And there were about 6 of us during that time frame. Again, very hard to find, but we knew where to find each other. When you go into an organization where I was working before at that level, it's interesting to see that there are numbers, and you will see that there are very well-dressed, well-heeled, well-credentialed, good-looking. I can't stress that anymore. Women of color, people of color that are walking these halls, very well qualified, above qualifications in some cases, but they hit a ceiling. I noticed that when you get to senior manager and director level, these ladies start to fall off. And my question became, first, where are they going? Why are they leaving? Because I made senior vice president before I was 40 in these agencies, and then shifted over to the client side and was expecting, especially at a company like the one where I was, that made it to the diversity top 10 at the time. I think we're like number 3 before I left, and they made it to the Hall of Fame. Thought that they would be different and we would see more women of color. And the reality was we had 2 senior vice presidents qualified as officers in this Fortune 10. And when one retired suddenly, they got one more, but they weren't in the C-suite. They weren't in the C-suite at all. And I wondered what was thinning these women out. And I'm curious. I'm a former journalist, and if I have a question, I'm just going to find that answer. I'm going to wrestle with it. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to talk to people about it. That's just who I am.